Welcome to today's webinar. I'm going to provide a little bit of context and then I will introduce our guests and then we're going to get into the discussion. Let's think about this for a second. There are millions of shipping containers traveling around the world all of the time. They're filled with all the goods and the resources that we need in our everyday lives. Food, clothes, energy, materials, commodities, vehicles, components, manufactured goods, everything that we see around us, everything that we need to stay alive. Now, the maritime industry, it's being transformed right now. We're entering a new era of visibility, accountability, and trust. Now, why is that happening? Because devices are being fitted onto assets like shipping containers. Huge amounts of data are now being gathered, and supply chain participants are demanding real visibility. The question is, how do shippers, so owners of cargo, carriers like shipping lines, and supply chain participants like service providers get their business in order? How can they prepare for what's coming next? How do they know what's around the corner? How can they navigate turbulent waters of regulatory change? So let's get to the title of our webinar. The title is Making Supply Chains Safe and Secure. We could call it Tackling Emerging Regulations and Compliance in Digital Maritime Trade. But that's something of a mouthful, but it's important that we define it like that. We're very, very fortunate to be joined by two leading figures in the regulatory space for the maritime industry. So from BIC, which is the Bureau for International Container, which we have the Secretary General, Mr. Douglas Owen, with us. So Douglas, welcome to the webinar today. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you for joining. And from Nexxiot, we have the Senior Director for Regulatory Affairs. It's Miss Marianna Levtov. So a huge welcome to you, Marianna, as well.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
So I'd like to kick things off with our experts and, waste no time. Douglas, I'd like to start with you, if I may. Can you give us a short overview of the objectives of BIC? I know it's very important what you do. It's not an organisation that's known to everybody outside the industry, but that doesn't detract from the vital work that you do. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you deliver value for the industry.
Sure, happy to. So the Bureau International des Conteneurs, BIC, as you know, is just now celebrating its 90th anniversary this year. We were founded in 1933 under the International Chamber of Commerce. And why does the BIC exist? Really, from day one, it was about supporting standards in the industry, bringing the industry together to build standards focused on safety, security, and more as the decades went on sustainability. So that's our mission still today. We're primarily known, I would say, for the BIC code that is used on essentially every container used in international trade. But we also operate other databases for the industry, such as BoxTech, what we call the Global Container Database, with the characteristics of each container. So what is this box? Who's its current operator? And then things like the ASEP database and the BIC facility database that I'm sure we'll talk about at some point during this webinar.
Well, I've got to say, it's an incredible responsibility such an organization has. And when you think about 90 years of operation, obviously change is constant in this industry, but it's accelerating all the time. And obviously, the exponential change brings its unique challenges. And we're going to get into some of the stuff that you just mentioned, I hope, shortly. Marianna, I'd like to come to you. I've known you for many years now, and Marianna's changed hats as many times as has been necessary in Nexxiot's evolution. But obviously, so currently in regulatory affairs, and somebody that's been flying the flag for the industry's interest for some time now. Tell me a little bit about what your role is like at the moment, Marianna, how you're bringing together the ecosystem in terms of regulations and so on.
For many years, Daniel, we are speaking about interoperability. We say other very interesting buzzwords, but my job is primarily to make these beautiful words come true. What is interoperability? It's cooperation between different stakeholders within the supply chain. My role is to bring different partners to the table, even if they are competitors, and to agree with them to cooperate in order to create higher level of standards that promote quality, efficiency, transparency, and of course, security and safety.
Fantastic. It's quite an interesting situation. We've been talking about the word co-opetition for a number of years. You know, it's almost like a portmanteau, put two words together to describe something that doesn't exist until now. But the truth is that we have been working together with our competitors as partners to make sure that we actually maximize this pace of change. So thanks for that definition, Marianna. I'm sure it's been extremely challenging and you're somewhat of an unsung hero working behind the scenes. I think probably you too, Douglas, as well. It's sometimes an unforgiving task to bring this community together. Douglas, maybe you could tell us a few of the challenges that the industry faces at the moment, and particularly with regards to data and quality and this idea of trust, because we have to work in partnership, don't we? How does that work now?
Well, I think one area we could look at is the topic of geofencing. So as we see more and more smart devices affixed to containers moving around the world, context is key. So is the container in this facility, outside of the facility? At what point did it go through the gate? And so having a quality fence around that geofence around that facility that's agreed by all parties is important. And so we've been speaking with a lot of companies like Nexxiot and really all of the IoT providers, as well as most of the big carriers active in this space, about how do we have I don't like to say single source of truth, but what I like to say is a single platform for consensus. And that's what we're proposing to the industry, a platform where everyone can come together and say, this is what we agree is this fence. And then a common library that's API accessible that everyone can tap into. So it doesn't matter if you're using this technology provider or that technology provider, you can trust this information that's coming to you. So that's, I think,
I love that definition, single platform for consensus. It's a subtle change, but actually it makes people, I think, more understanding of the value that it creates, rather than that there's a dictator at the top of it saying this is the truth, this is the truth. Is that what you mean by this?
Quite right. And I mean, this is experts coming together and saying we agree on this, and not certainly not big dictating to anyone. It's really just, again, it's bringing people together, as Marianna alluded to, including competitors, to build an overall ecosystem that's safer, with better data quality, more eyes on these facilities. It works for everyone. So I think it's a great example where competitors can come together.
I'm wonderfully encouraged, to hear, from Marianna and from yourself whenever we meet, the passion that you guys have for pushing this, because without it, it's very difficult to make these, technology changes fit the needs of the market, and also for everyone to be comfortable to use it. Marianna, I'd like to switch up to you again for a second and ask you a question about the impact of this IoT technology. We've heard for many years, when we started Nexxiot back in 2015, it was the Internet of Things is coming. There'll be 50 billion individual objects connected to the internet in the next 15, 20 years. Well, now we're seeing the big adoption. We've seen, the devices being installed onto the shipping containers of Hapag-Lloyd's fleet in this case. What's the perception in the market about the arrival of IoT as it's now being rolled out? That stakeholders are going to get this level of visibility. Are they happy?
I think that they are cautious and they are very interested in what's going to happen. When we have started quite some time ago, innovation of IoT was within a silo. So you could have a smart manufacturing, for example, and many processes have been already digitized and automated, but there was no connection to supply chain. So you would stop the innovation and stop the visibility and the level of packaging, for example, and then you will need to rely on different milestones of visibility, but it wouldn't guarantee that you really know what's happening with your fleet or what's happening with your cargo till it arrives. As regular citizens, we all know it when we're expecting a package to come and we have estimated time of arrival that's not 100% true. We are very lucky if it gets in time or even ahead of time, but the predictability is not on our side. This is what we are doing. We are connecting the dots together. We are bringing different innovations to one table in order to have the full visibility end to end, starting from the smart production and finishing with arriving of goods to the final client. To get all picture together, it's actually a big challenge. Some pioneers in this market, as you said, Hapag-Lloyd, have seen the benefit and value and started already now, and they went all in. The others are watching right now and deciding how to make this move. And I think the technology is absolutely ready. The partnership exists also between different service providers in order to enable this. So big decisions are in the hands of big players right now. And I think in the moment when the integration of different solutions into one visibility chain will start, we will see the benefits also as a regular citizens, as I said before, at our homes.
It's a very exciting moment when you put it like that for the industry, Marianna, because it's a big change. Obviously, probably the biggest change in terms of standardization in the last 100 years in global transport of cargo and freight was the invention of the shipping container itself, which I think was 1956. Was that right, Douglas? Something around then?
Well, that's a point that's often discussed. When was the starting point? But obviously, Malcolm McLean's standardization that came around 1957 was a big moment, for the industry.
But actually, the container itself is a standard. We have to remember that, and actually, that was something that, arguably, if you read the book The Box, it pulled 2 billion people out of poverty around the world. So it was a seismic change for humanity, advanced the rate of globalization and so on. But it's still taken us another 50 years since then or more to actually start to get to the point where we're breaking down these silos of information. Now, Marianna thankfully mentioned silos. Maybe, Douglas, you could put your unique perspective on what this means, this silos topic. Where are these silos coming from, and who's holding these individual silos? To the non-expert, it sounds like a sort of a mystical thing.
Well, I would go back first to the topic of the geofences, right? So if every party is doing their own work in their corner and defining how they're going to draw fences, what standards they're going to use, how they're going to communicate with their providers, you have a bunch of silos, and it becomes very difficult for parties to utilize this technology in an efficient way. So I think that's one area. But another area is just, what is this container, right? So as the container goes through the supply chain, leaves the depot, goes out to the shipper, comes back to the terminal, and each party along the way needs to know something about that container. So starting with, what is the tare weight of that container? I need to put cargo in it. I need to do a verified gross mass declaration. What is the weight of the container? In the case of shipper-owned containers or tank containers, you might have a question of, well, actually, what is this container that's coming to my terminal? I need to know what this container is. I need to know the size and type. I need to do the stowage plan. What is the stacking capability of this container? So this is where I think having, again, a centralized database where that information is available to any party along the way, API accessible, so that it's really data on demand as the box moves through the system. So moving away from silos where terminals hang on to data on containers because they don't have a place where they can go to and find out what is this box at any one moment. So I think more and more people are looking to this solution to try to I would say it's a building block for a lot of smart things that technology providers are doing, and I think that's the case for really all of our databases. These are the tools that can be used to let's say as a base for the smart things that the IoT people are doing.
Marianna, you wear lots of different hats. I know that you've sort of developed your role over the years, but wearing the one as a tech vendor, how is it possible to ensure that we as an organization, Nexxiot, is compliant, but also to manage the interests of our clients and the interests of the rest of the ecosystem?
It's a very interesting question, actually, and I think that Douglas and our colleagues from the standardization bodies have moved the needle during the last few years, and the regulatory space became by itself interoperable and promotes cooperation right now. Previously, when we have started being interested and engaged in standardization work 6 years ago, neither our competitors nor our clients have been broadly presented in different regulatory bodies. So the discussion would be rather more theoretical about the innovation and standardization processes that are needed. Bringing the active participants of the industry to the table brought us also new aspects, and we, meaning a tech company, understood the needs of our clients because we could openly discuss them outside of the framework of sales or commercial discussion. They shared their pain points, and we shared our ideas, and innovation part came up naturally in this sense. Having also competitors at the table, the focus becomes very specific on the quality of services. And of course, it trains to discuss standardization with keeping your own IP protected, but contributing to the industry. It's a very interesting game, and it brings a lot of value. I think we accelerated all the processes during the last 5 years, and not only the biggest standardization body that we have, the ISO, I understood the importance of open discussion with multiple experts, but also segmental associations, different types of forums, started to engage with experts that are specializing in IoT, in telematic, also the equipment manufacturers as a separate group of stakeholders in this chain, as well as users. We are not only talking about the shipping lines or container owners, we are talking today about the cargo owners, the freight forwarders, and many other agencies like Port Community System and belonging to them representatives of different type of authorities. This is unprecedented change, I think. Douglas is way longer in this segment and in this industry, but I think we sense the same. The level of openness and the level of willing to innovate through standards today is higher than before.
You know, it's a testament to your incredible work because there's huge complexity that you tackle every day. And I know from Marianna telling me the stories about, you know, the meetings and the different discussions, you know, that include our competitors or co-opetition, that include our partners, it includes our clients, and it includes organizations, you know, like the BIC, Douglas. And I find it incredibly encouraging to see that we can work cross-functionally, cross organizations, internationally, and really drive this change. Douglas, maybe you could have a few minutes just to explain a little bit about what BIC is doing in terms of building on its work in safety and security. And you mentioned at the introduction also now increasingly sustainability, because you know, obviously you're in a unique position. You sit above the you know, the individual industry players, but you're working together with all of them. And you know, have we reached a point now where people really are driving for this, and you're able to support them at maximum speed?
Maximum speed, I don't know, but I think you're right that we do have an interesting position at a sort of interface between different parties in the industry, between the owners and the operators, leasing companies and carriers, shippers, terminals. And of course, we have a seat with observer status at places like the IMO and the World Customs Organization. So just going back to the example of a moment ago, we saw regulators moving toward a definition of a quote unquote safe type that I think was leaving a lot in the industry quite concerned. And thanks to our role there and our connection with the standards making community, we were able to sort of put our flag up and encourage the IMO to look to the ISO working group that sits under our subcommittee here. To ask the question, what should this be? How do we define certified safe type? And I would certainly applaud Marianna's work in leading that ad hoc working group that was very quickly set up with several of your competitors to really roll up sleeves and come up with standards that can be used to keep the industry safe. And I saw really a lot of care in making sure that was done correctly. But also written up in a way that engineers can build devices for, and are practical and can be used to grow the industry. So I think that was a
We're
a great
talking about
example.
safe. Are we talking about safe hardware here,
We're
Douglas? Is
talking
that correct?
about safe harbor. That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. On the safety, we support the Marin top tier joint industry project. So we're focused on how do we keep containers from falling off of vessels. So that's a 3-year study that we think has great potential, and they're really leaving no stone unturned and looking for solutions to this issue. So we're active supporters there. So yeah, I mean, safety, security, sustainability. Again, these are the topics that we're focused on every day.
One thing that's been in my mind all the way since I was involved in founding Nexxiot is there's a lot of things that we just accept are going on every day, but we don't know it fully. We don't know the cause. We can't relate the actual incident to the cause because there's not enough data. I guess that's a big part of this as well, that we bring the best of your 90 years of experience as an industry body, sort of supporting the industry and managing quality topics for the industry. And there we suddenly bring all this data into the field as well. And this sort of gives us lots of new opportunities, but also more complexity as well. Is that right?
I think that's right. There is a lot of data out there and a lot of parties with a lot of interest. So I think organizations like ourselves that can bring people together to find common ground, that helps us keep moving forward.
And Marianna, sorry, yeah, you go. Sorry.
And again, having the platforms that people can come and build on. I think DCSA is another organization I think that's doing a lot of great work, and we're trying to see how we can support them to make sure they're successful as well. So yeah.
So digital. You tell us what that stands for. Digital
Container Shipping Association. Yeah.
Okay, and that leads me straight into the next point for Marianna, which is that Marianna's been sort of sitting with a foot in the door or a head, some involvement, let's say, in various standards and committees and working groups. Can you give us a little overview of that landscape, Marianna, in terms of who are the main parties and who's responsible for which part, just so that our listeners can understand lots of acronyms, what's behind the acronym, yeah?
Yes, to prepare your pencil and paper. We will go through the alphabet. As I see it, and I would ask Douglas to correct me if I'm getting something wrong, for me personally, the major standardization body would be ISO. For the industry itself, independently from the segment, would it be maritime, land, in particular road or rail? And of course, about the treatment of the equipment that is related to transportation and logistics. This is one of the main bodies that also connect geographies. We are talking with our colleagues from China, we are talking from colleagues from Brazil, Japan. It has no regional connotation in this sense. If we want to go to our specific region like Europe, you have a European Commission, you have DG Move, and local organizations that are partnering with ISO like ETSI, Sense and ELEC, and many others. We are also, on behalf of Nexxiot, part of these associations and trying to harmonize the standards that are done on regional level with global ones. We are promoting cooperation between the bodies in order to avoid that work is done in parallel, and good if it can be harmonized, but would be worth if the outcome will be different on the international level and on the regional level. The next very important body that can make recommendations, provide intellectual property such as white papers, business requirements, specification is UNECE, and also specifically UN CFACT under the ECE body that includes also multiple international parties, and especially the transport and logistic domain is critical for all of us, and we cooperate there also quite some time. If we're speaking more regarding segmental associations and organizations that are critical for maritime transportation in particular, we would speak about Container Owners Association. Beyond telematic working group, Container Owners Association provides a lot of input on the codes of practice. Would it be a flexi tank or regular dry container, reefer and reefer telematics, and similar. You would have also International Tank Container Organization. We are speaking about containers in maritime world, relating them to the main container owners, lessors, and the shipping lines. However, there is a shipper's container that called tank container, and we see them also on the vessels. And the connection with the tank container world that mainly deals with dangerous goods is critical in also our thoughts about sustainability and green industry and moving forward. So we're also part there, and then also critical connection to the whole maritime domain. There are associations where some parties in the supply chain can't be members, for example, Digital Container Shipping Association, and we are promoting collaboration with those parties that can't be members due to the decision of the association setup committee, let's say like this. Definitely it has a different name, but the DCSA has members consisting of shipping lines, and definitely we as service providers, or for example OEMs who produce reefer containers, are not part to this organization. However, we can contribute by collaboration and being kind of an advisory group to their standards and initiatives. On top of this, I think any segmental working groups that are created ad hoc, one of them, it's in the rail industry, the TEAS consortium that promotes ITSS standards, can be inspirational for the whole supply chain, because you can take best practice from rail industry or road industry and bring them to maritime, and do vice versa with the maritime standards as well. So we are trying to be not only deep sea focused, but also look at other types of transportation, and necessarily also look at the cargo business, because we're speaking about containers, vessels, trains, or trucks, but without cargo inside, there would be no transportation, no logistics. So collaboration with the bodies that define transportation recommendations for cargo itself, and how to monitor cargo quality, is also of our interest.
Thank you, Marianna. It's incredible that you can just make that summary, because there's huge complexity, as the listener can hear. But you can see that there's massive dedication from our guests on the Douglas and Marianna, but also from your colleagues at BIC and amongst the other organisations and bodies. I'm going to leave the last. We've nearly reached 30 minutes. I know that we've actually got more things coming up, events and meetings. So we're on a time budget. I'm going to give the last word to you, Douglas. I'm going to keep it pretty simple. There's lots of different participants, but what can major participants do in terms of practical steps today to get the right information in their hands and to be prepared for these changes that are coming and the new regulations and requirements of these bodies?
Well, I think, in every organization, there's going to be someone who's dealing with, standards matters, regulatory matters. What I've seen over the last couple of decades is sort of less focus in this area, as people have sort of, as you said earlier, the container is a standard, and it's been a standard for decades and decades. And so I think in the minds of many, they might say, well, our standards work is done here, right? But it's not done, of course. I mean, even if we talk about the container itself, a container that was designed for a 3,000 TEU vessel that's 4 or 5 high stack, the situation now might be very different with 24, 25,000 TEU vessels and stacking 10, 11 high. So even there, corner castings, lashing standards, stacking capabilities, these are things that have to be continually reviewed. And we're hearing that from the IMO, putting pressure on the ISO to make sure these standards are kept up to date. And I think on the digital side, it's clear. I mean, these technologies are coming in very quickly. We've had, early on, there were some incidents with tracking devices. So the responsible companies have, gotten very involved, because they want to make sure that they, as stewards to this new technology, it's done correctly, that people are making informed decisions when they choose their provider. So I think, going back to your question, I think, the people who deal with standards and regulations, who say, hey, I need to get on a plane to go to this working group meeting, it's important. Well, it probably is important. And I think, again, there's been not enough support for those people who do this important work under this mistaken assumption that our standards work is done. It's not done. It's an ongoing challenge, whether it's safety, preparing for technology, security. So let's keep up the good work.
So let's just wrap up then. We have to recognise that this is essential work, and the consequences of not being sort of innovative in this area and being ahead of the game, because obviously it's changing fast. Marianna, let's just what are the consequences of not getting this right? What do you see? Obviously, I don't want to finish on a negative, but we need to force or drive this positive change. We have to support. I think of illegal wildlife trafficking and misdeclared cargo and all these things. But where are the clients' minds? They're going to create value, in various ways. But what would you like to say to wrap things up?
From the regulatory point of view, the European Union and basically the whole world is moving towards sustainability and green environment. There are many options how to do things right, but one of the ways to provide this kind of visibility on sustainable goals, you need to have the visibility across the supply chain. There is no other way to do it, whether it will be illicit goods or anything similar, or even dangerous goods that are transported not in the right way. The price of not playing along with the technology is to have more and more casualties and more damage, basically, as simple as it is. You said what can be the consequence in parallel if the players who are providing services are not updating themselves with the standards, their products will be irrelevant. It's very painful for a particular company that invests a lot of efforts and resources into development of a new technology to figure out that they missed the train, that the next standard will destroy their technology already in a year or two, and they cannot roll it out. So better to cooperate, of course, better to trade than to invade. And we are trying to make everything possible that that collaboration and commercial environment for the existence of the innovation will be here and will give an opportunity to compete on innovation, to compete on interesting solutions for the situations in the supply chain, but not to compromise on quality.
So, Marianna, thank you so much, because that's a salient warning, but also focus on the opportunities that we can really improve things. So, look, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you did too. I hope it was valuable to our listeners. I look forward to doing a follow-up soon. Things are changing fast. But for now, I'd like to say thank you to our guests, Mr. Douglas Owen and Miss Marianna Levtov. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Always a pleasure. Take care.
Thank you.